Not far from the village there is a small lake, quite unremarkable. But not everyone manages to find it. For a long time I tried to persuade a local old man to take me there, but he only swore and gesticulated. Finally, on the recommendation of his neighbor, I found a volunteer. We walked for about an hour through the forest. At first it was just forest, but the further we got, the denser the moss became and more of the trees were covered in lichen. At one point we even had to wade through the moss thickets. Sometimes they were taller than we were, and the trees were getting older and older. It was quite a gloomy day and the wind was quite strong. The trees were rustling above us. It looked like it was going to get dark soon. The trees were stretching their curved branches out over the trail as if creating arches. Like in those old fairy tale movies. We almost expected to see forest spirits. But we didn't see any forest spirits. We reached the lake. As we approached it, the sun was shining brightly over the lake. And there was not the slightest breeze. During our journey we were constantly disturbed by some insects. They were flying around us, biting us, climbing into our mouths and eyes, buzzing and humming. While around the lake there was a grave silence. It was as if we were looking at an extremely contrasting black and white photograph in a dark room. Around the lake, it was perfectly round, as if it were artificial, all covered with huckleberries. I had never seen such large bushes. It turned out that the lake could only be reached by a path. There was a swamp all around. And in that swamp, however, there were trees growing. I was quite uncomfortable when I stepped on a tree root and the 10-meter-high tree started to slowly lean to the side. We came to the water itself. It was black as tar and just as thick. There was not the slightest wave or any sign of life. It all looked strange: black sky, black water and bright green grass. But the most amazing thing was what we felt inside. There was some kind of uneasiness, as if we were in darkness, blindfolded and with our hands and feet bound on thin ice. We had no idea where the shore was and where the bottom was. It was horrible, but at the same time we had a sense of delight. It was exhilarating. Not far from the path, about 20 meters away, I noticed an old wooden box. I decided to see what was in it. I almost fell through, but still pulled the box out. There were a few trollers in it, but the anchors had long since fallen apart. I decided to take them with me as a souvenir. I showed the box to the old man when we got back to the village. He turned pale, crossed himself and began to tell me. About 15 years ago, he too had gone to this lake to try to catch fish. It, too, had struck him as unusual. But that wasn't the point. He had some frogs for bait, and one of them sat on the edge and started croaking. He decided to show it who's boss, so he took a rock with moss on it and threw it at the frog. It fell into the water, and suddenly a huge snake appeared out of the water and tried to attack him. He struggled to get home, dropping all his gear. The locals said that guys from the village were sailing inflatable boats on this lake and were trying to measure its depth. They had a rope with a brick on the end. They didn't even reach the bottom, but they found a sandbar in the middle of the lake, about a meter deep. The islet appeared to be underwater. Interestingly, the slope of the slope, if the brick and rope were to be believed, was about 45%. Many years have passed, but the feeling of awe and admiration still does not leave me. It was as if that strange lake was pulling me toward it. And my friends had the same feelings. We never discussed it after our walk. It was impossible. Only about 5 years ago we discussed it and realized how amazing and scary it was.